Start recording. Okay.
Sure.
It's recording. Okay. So yeah, so thanks for joining me, Samantha. So back to our conversation about, the people. I know that this shift is happening on our planet where, some people are just not going to really ascend as opposed to the people that are ready to move forward. Do you pick that up too, that's what's happening?
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I do feel as though our vibration is shifting into a couple of different earths at this time. Some people, depending upon the vibration that you're resonating at, will seem to die off in our world, when in actuality, they're just going to a different earth. And in their world, we are the ones that are dying off. So it's going in two different directions, similar to like an egg splitting into two directions. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And it's wonderful. Because am I ready to not deal with any people that are so dense and so focused on, on the lack in life. We all are programmed, to various degrees of focusing on what we don't have or what we don't have that we want. And instead of being grateful for what we do have, it's amazing to be here at this time.
No, I fully agree with you, Tasha.
Yeah. So Samantha, how did this all start for you?
Well, I've been a contactee my entire life. And so when I look at that component, that means that from the time I was born, I've been having interactions with extraterrestrial, multidimensional beings. With the earliest ones that came to see me were a variety of andromedans coming to give me healing on my lungs, which is something that the ETs have had to do throughout my entire life. I'm an adorable little monkey who's prone to chest infections like bronchitis and stuff like that. So even with COVID going around, they came to see me last year because my kids and I had something very, very similar to COVID. And we ended up having ETs come to heal us. This was before anyone knew what COVID was. It was about a month and a half before then.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so it's kind of an ongoing thing where, because of the amount of beings that I've worked with on a soul level, I have a lot of soul contracts in place, meaning that my contracts with them range anywhere from hybridization to the aspect of being taught by them through school on craft to learn how to utilize psychic abilities, make psychic abilities more normalized for people that are here, and share that information, helping to make it so a lot of the different beings are well understood. As you and I were discussing a few minutes ago in relation to the reptilians, there's a lot of stigma and misunderstanding about the various levels of who these beings are. Some of the reptilians aren't very nice. Well, guess what? Some of them are absolutely wonderful. And just like humans, we can't necessarily paint them all with the same brush.
Exactly.
And so that's one thing I'm here to help people understand is the various races that are coming forward, not only from the elementals to the extraterrestrials, but to the multidimensionals. The differences being their metaphysical capabilities from the beings that we have contact with on this planet, such as the tall whites, are from this dimension. So it takes them real time to go from where their planet is to ours, whereas other beings that we interact with, from the Pleiadians and the Greys and the Reptilians, are in vibrations very similar to our own, but they utilize technology such as vortexes and multidimensional craft to be able to go from where they are in the Pleiades, for instance, or the Orion star system. And they're on a different plane of existence. So if you were to go right now to Maya or Tegeta in the Pleiades, you'd be like, well, I don't see anyone here. Clearly the Pleiadians are lying, when in actuality, you'd have to shift vibration and dimension and go to those same locations. Be like, oh, it's actually a thriving location. There's a lot of different beings here. And that's part of why I break it down to the extraterrestrial and multidimensional spectrum, is helping people to better understand more of the actuality of what's going on within our universe. It's a fun job.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And so it's what you're saying is the dimensions, the densities of levels of consciousness. So that's what the densities pretty much are, right? So the dimensions, because I think a lot of people are confused about what are densities and dimensions. There's levels of pretty much awareness and consciousness, and that's what densities you would probably say are. Like you're saying, if you were to look at the Pleiades, we wouldn't see them because our frequency is lower than they are. Plus the spectrum of light, our eyes can only see 1% of the spectrum of light. So we're not seeing a whole lot, right?
Well,
is that what you're talking about?
That is precisely what I'm talking about. But one thing I'd like to mention is that as a whole, humanity is becoming more psychic. And in doing so, our ability to see beyond the general spectrum of light that people could have perceived 100 years ago or 50 years ago is actually increasing in broadwidth, meaning that we're able to perceive vibrations further below us and further ahead of us or above us. And in doing so, it's allowing for there to be a lot more ghost sightings, extraterrestrial, multidimensional sightings. People are able to see craft that other people can't necessarily see, yet technology will pick it up. And the same thing can be said with children seeing their dead ancestors or things of that nature. And so as we become more psychic in relation to the ascension that we just talked about, this is part of how that ascension process is very gradually taking place. We won't wake up one day and be like, oh, wow, I'm in the fifth dimension. That's awesome. No, it's going to take us pretty much the rest of our lifetime to transcend these bodies over. So it's pretty interesting, but very different than what people are expecting.
Yeah. People think that it's just going to be a instant thing, right? And it's not. It's nothing like that, right? Yeah. I think for a while I thought that too. I mean, I remember 10 years ago when I first started having these magical experiences, and I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. I like, this is awesome, and then the world just kind of stayed the same. And it was like all these magical, wonderful things were happening for me. And it was like, I was looking around and it wasn't happening for everybody else, but boy, did it really shift my consciousness tremendously,
Yeah, I do. I understand too. Well, it's hard when you see beyond the spectrum to really live within the same level of reality that other people do. You don't care about the same mundane things like who's winning what sports thing or what's in style or stuff like that. You just don't care anymore.
Not at all. Yeah. And I used to be a girl that used to buy $200 pairs of jeans all the time. And I was really into, brands, but yeah, that's changed quite dramatically ever since then. It's, it's such a big shift going from, modeling, which is so focused on looks, which is the complete opposite of spirituality, right? Not that you can't be beautiful and be spiritual, but the last thing you should be focused on is the way you look, because it's about what's going on internally and not externally. So
I agree. And we're these adorable little vessels that we're temporarily inhabiting. I find it so interesting how we all get sucked in that paradigm of, well, this is what I look like. And this, like, okay, I didn't wear makeup today and I didn't do my hair today and I didn't shower, and therefore I have less value than the day that I did those things. It's funny how we have those little nuances in our head kind of eating away at us, making us feel like we're less than, when in actuality, we're just occupying a cute little vessel in the meantime.
Yeah. And it really, for me, I know that when I go out into public and when I feel beautiful, that energy is, people pick up on that energy, so yeah, it's all about the way we perceive ourselves too. I think we're just so hard on ourselves because we're programmed. It's about unprogramming ourselves from being that way. There's so much programming that's so embedded in us, and it's just about focusing and really unprogramming ourselves from it.
I do. I full-heartedly agree with you. That's one thing that I found to be very, very interesting just over the years, is I worked very hard to help my children to not go through a lot of the programming that most other people do, especially at a young age, especially when you look at the first 10 years of life or so, pinnacle for determining how programmed you're going to be. And so when I would watch movies with my children, we would stop and discuss things like, okay, do you notice how this is what's going on? The characters are being portrayed in this way. Well, that's programming you to want to view this person as the good guy or the bad guy. What else are we seeing here? What else is important? And so the aspect of programming, it's very subtle, and it's in everything from YouTube to Disney to our phones and our news feed. It's even on the ads we see in the books we read.
Yeah. And I think that it's been so detrimental when it comes to people fearing extraterrestrials. I mean, because of Hollywood, they portray them as just being these evil things, and they don't realize that there's a lot of them out there that look just like we do. They just might have orange skin or 6 fingers or whatever. It's just making people aware of just how vast our galaxy is, teeming with life, is in and itself a complete shift in consciousness, I think, that people will experience once they open up to that.
I full-heartedly agree. One thing I've found over the years that I've encountered a lot of humanoid extraterrestrials who look very similar to you and I, and they could walk down the street or you could pass them in the mall and you would be none the wiser that the person you just passed was an ET, unless you look at their auric field and you feel their vibration, in which case you can sense that there's something a little bit different about them. And you might not be able to put your finger on it until you're like 5 minutes past, you're like, oh goodness, that person is probably an ET.
And so Samantha, I know that you astral travel like every night, which is amazing. I mean, I only astral traveled because I was pulled into that experience, by the beings that one time. Maybe a few other times, but that was really dramatic. But you do this like every night, right? But you also meet extraterrestrials face to face in person too, right?
Yes, I do. I meet them physically, psychically, as well as astrally. And one thing that I've been categorizing within my book that I've been writing, I'm including the last 35 years or so of encounters. And as I've been doing so, I've been trying to write out whether something was an astral encounter, a physical encounter, or a psychic encounter to help people better understand the complexity of the encounters that we can experience, but also to help people like yourself who are really starting to get to know the aspect of, okay, I'm having some form of encounter, and recognizing what it was to better understand your own contact history. It's very important for people.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. So when's the last time you met an extraterrestrial face to face?
About 2 weeks ago.
Wow. And you never know when it's going to happen. It just happens, right? Like you're walking your
Sometimes.
dog kind of thing, right?
Sometimes, quite often you'll end up feeling the vibration of a craft being either over top of your house, or you'll be in your, like for instance, I could be doing something like the dishes and notice out of the corner of my eye a being appear and be like, okay, why am I seeing a reptilian that's standing in my dining room? And you'll look and be like, okay, that means my clairvoyance is picking it up if I see it in my peripheral. But if I go and turn to look full on, that means they're fully cloaked to me. And I'm like, okay, I can feel you there. I can see you there. That's not a big deal. And then quite often what I end up finding is I will end up walking out of my house because, yes, I am prone to sleepwalking because of my contact. And I'll find myself walking out my front door and be like, oh, why am I walking at my front door? Not realizing I'm in a programmed state. I'm like, oh, there's a blue orb coming down from a large star. Oh, wait, that's not a star. That's a UFO. Okay. And here's a being stepping out of an orb. Things of that nature happen quite a bit.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so these experiences that you have, do you ever like set them up for yourself, or do they just happen? Do you before you go to sleep, do you say, okay, I want to meet a certain kind of race or species, or I want to experience this, or I want to go to explore that? Is that how it happens? Or do you just go to sleep and it just happens?
Kind of both. One thing I find is that we have no control over these beings. You can request, like for instance, if I'm having an issue with being sick, then I will send not only telepathic messages to them, but I will put myself in a meditative type state and be like, I need you to come see me. I'm having a lot of issues with this. And lo and behold, they will always come see me when there's any form of health issue. Same with if my children are having problems. One thing I found is that even with experiences like where my a few years ago, there was a shooter warning at my children's school where someone was threatening to come and shoot up the kids. And it was terrifying. And I called all the beings I worked with, and I saw beings pop in physically for a moment and then saw them pop out just as quickly, indicating they told me, we have your message. And I asked them to surround the school to protect all the children, protect all the parents and the teachers that are there. And everything was fine. But when you work with these beings, you develop a kinship with them. You realize that you would no more want to control them than you want to control your own mother, father, sister, brother.
Yeah.
You can't control them, but you can make requests of them. And quite often they choose to come see me at their own discretion. I don't always know who's come to see me. It's very common for me to wake up in the middle of the night and be like, okay, there's a craft above my house. For instance, the other night I was with my dogs and I was laying in bed and like, huh, that's really quiet. And I noticed like, I can't hear my bathroom fan. I can't hear the furnace going. I can't hear the traffic outside the highway that's a few blocks away. And I'm like, it is eerily quiet. And then I feel it's like, okay, and there's a vibration of rhythmic, pulsating vibration above the home. And my one puppy, he's an Australian Shepherd. He's growling. He's like, grrr. I'm like, okay, what's wrong? I'm like, Shadow, calm down. It's okay. It's just a craft. And sometimes they'll wait because they'll try to put down like an energetic vibration coming down into the home to put the pets in a catatonic state, to make them more relaxed. Because when you have animals that are very protective of you, like my dogs are, if a being suddenly walks through the wall, I know my dogs would attack it. They will freak out.
Right.
And so I can see why, for their own safety, they choose to put some of these measures in place.
Sure. And, I think that's a good point to make is, when people that are just learning about these things, they're hearing how these grays are, well, they paralyzed you. That means they're evil. No, they know how humans are, that we're still killing each other.
Of course.
And they're doing that for their protection and your protection, because they don't know how you're going to respond or react. You might try to throw them over the building or something, over the wall, or who knows. They don't really know how you're going to behave. So it's just a safety thing, right?
It is quite often. Sometimes I am lucky enough to have my guides that I work with end up mentioning beforehand, like, Samantha, you're going to be having an encounter tonight. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be having an encounter. Okay, let's put on some contact appropriate pajamas. Let's not wear a silk lacy nightie. Let's not go to bed naked. Let's make sure we wear something that covers us from head to toe. Because on the odd encounter, I will find myself being put back outside my backyard like I was about a month ago. And it's freezing cold. And I had these two lovely Asian appearing ETs that were humanoid walk me out of my home. I went to their craft. We had an encounter. They put me back. I saw the craft flying away. And I'm like, okay, good thing I'm in my pajamas because it's close to 0 and I have to walk 15 feet up into the house and up the deck type thing.
Right.
So,
Wow.
you get in the habit of really thinking about some very peculiar things when you work with beings and you start to have these encounters happening.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous. People are like, why don't you put up security cameras? Well, guess what? I had them for a while.
Yeah.
And they had me going out the other doors. I have doors on 4 sides of my house, and I'd always have my encounters going through the sliding glass door on the other side. I'm like, I don't have cameras on that side. I've got cameras on these sides. What the heck?
That's so interesting because, when that being, when she woke me up, and then, she picked up my, like, oh my God, she is real. And then she backed into the bathroom and then out came that huge sphere, transparent sphere. That was her craft, obviously, right? And so how their physics is obviously very different than ours because that thing got like this size and then it like elongated and then it just like silently went through my ceiling. So what's the difference between that and your experience with these extraterrestrials that actually pick you up and drop you off in your backyard? Like, why don't they just come into your house like that chick did? They do?
do.
Okay,
Sometimes
so it just depends on like their level of frequency or
that and their technology, what's available to them. Grays quite often have me physically walk out of my home. It's very common for me to find myself in my gray encounters to walk out into my driveway or into the backyard or into the front yard even. With reptilians, I've found they use blue orbs, pink orbs, yellowy, orange orbs sometimes, really depends, to come down into the house to collect you. On occasion, you will find yourself going through a slice in the wall, like a vortex being inside your wall, like what I've seen with the Arcturians, where it's like an oval shaped vortex that is white, gray, and blue, kind of swirling, looks almost like a liquid smoke on the exterior portion, and they'll step through. You'll go from being in your house to being in a craft, like you're stepping into a boat type thing.
Wow.
Which is kind of interesting. Some other times you'll find with different beings, some of the humanoid type beings, you'll end up going up through the ceiling of your roof and you'll have a hole in the ceiling and be floating up. It really does depend upon the type of beings and the technology they use. I've had mantis beings in my home quite a few times performing healings on myself, same with reptilians and quite a few of the hybrid type beings. That's very normal. Sometimes they will come in, sometimes they won't. It depends on what is best for them and what kind of technology they have access to.
Wow. So have you met your hybrid children?
Quite a few, yes. I'm very fortunate that way.
So you have quite a lot, yes?
Yeah, 70 something.
Huh? 70 something?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. And is it with do you know what all races that they're with? Are you familiar with Bashar and the IL?
I do know Bashar. I don't know much about the IL. I don't have a habit of learning a lot about other people. Right. And it's not out of disrespect. It's just I have a hard enough time keeping my own encounters straight, let alone trying to understand other people's too. So,
right.
One thing I do find is that I have hybrids that are done with white beings. So it's like a variety of gray, but they'd be classified as tall whites. I have them with grays. I have them with reptilians, black reptilians in particular, ones that I found that I had been bred with. And I've met a few of my sons with that. I have it with numerous humanoid type beings. I have a lot of hybrids that are a mixture of various types of beings, some Lyran, which is a variety of cat being as well. Yeah. But quite often I have found within the hybridization spectrum, I am often bred with another man that is human that also has altered ET DNA. And we have additional ET DNA spliced in within our genetics and after when the hybrid is being created.
Wow.
So, it's a bit more complicated. Yeah.
And there was, what is this incubus? I'm still trying to understand this succubus, incubus. I'm trying what? So there's relationships that they're trying to set you up with in your physical life, or these are relationships?
The ETs are trying to set up those relationships. The incubus and succubus are simply parasitic entities of lower vibration that will take on the form of another human that you know, whether it's a person that you've had a former relationship with, someone that you are sexually attracted to, so on and so forth, and they'll project that image or screen memory of themselves into your mind, and you will end up thinking you're having just a sex dream or an encounter where you're having sex with someone, when in actuality you're having sex with one of these beings and they're feeding off of your life force essence.
Wow.
Very common throughout history.
Is it? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. So when someone, you know, I another video of yours, I could relate to this. It was quite a years back, but I have experienced waking up and just feeling like I've been like a train just ran over me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced that only a few times, but yeah. So what does that mean when you experience that? It means usually someone's sucking energy off of you, or?
Typically, if you're not someone who goes through a lot of ET contact or MyLab experiences, then it's more likely to be something like an incubus or a succubus. However, if you are someone that's a MyLab, you could be being put back after a training scenario or after a long program that you could be gone in, like a 10 and back, a 20 and back, things of that nature. Or if it's with extraterrestrials and multidimensionals, you could have just gave birth on craft the night before and gone through a healing process and put back.
I'm pretty sure I had a few babies in 2015 for sure.
Aw, cute.
Yeah, I've never met them. I mean, I don't have a conscious memory of meeting them. I would love to meet them because I don't have any children in this world, you know, and I would love to have children in this world, but that's another whole story to talk about. But, you know, yeah, I would love to meet my hybrid children. I want a baby so bad. I would love to hold a baby.
Of course, and you can ask the beings that you work with, either asking your angels, your spirit guides, or the extraterrestrials and multidimensionals that you work with, to allow for you to meet your hybrid children. You might end up meeting them in your astral state long before you meet them in your physical state. I've had one of my hybrid children for certain show up within my home, and that was a little bit odd. My husband and I were watching a movie or TV, I can't remember what it was, in our upper living room. And it was kind of funny because we've got these really beautiful stained glass windows that are kind of dividing like the hallway from the living room section. It's just like a little bit of character in the house. And I could see this little like round ET face with large black eyes and like this, like, I think it was like a reddy brown hair, if I'm not mistaken. That was kind of like shoulder length, super cute little thing, peeking her face at us. And the size of like a 4-year-old. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's a hybrid in my house. I got so excited. I'm like, don't move. Look at that section of the TV when it was going dark. She was there for a minute.
Inside your house.
Yeah.
And then she just disappeared. She just took off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, do you think she did that because she just wanted to see mommy? Is that what?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Some of the hybrid children are really sweet. If you start to really get to know them, like I sing to my hybrids, I pick them up when I see them on craft, I rock them back and forth, even as they grow. And it sounds so weird to people when you say, well, when you meet your hybrids, why do you do that? And it's like, well, they're still my children. You have a sense of kinship with them. Even my reptilian sons, the ones that are about, like, they're nearly 6 feet tall, and they're only, I would say, 15 years old at best. Like, they're not like that young, but they're not that old. And when I looked at them, I'm like, I could tell they were my sons right away. And I knew I couldn't pick these two up and sing to them and coddle them in the same way I do with the other ones. But there was still a sense of like love and compassion that I felt towards them.
Sure, a connection. And I'm sure is it deeper than the connection you have with your children on this planet?
No, it's kind of about the same. And the reason why I say that is my children that I have on this planet, the 2 that I have and the 2 that are coming, I've had the great pleasure of knowing who their souls were before they came in. I had several years where I got to know them and what their soul origins were and that they want to be born to me, so on and so forth. And with my 2 children that are coming, it's the same thing. I realize what ET race is there. I know what their objectives are and what it is that they're hoping to accomplish. And so when you get to know your children on the other side before they come in, then you get to have them here, it develops a much stronger relationship. It's very different than a conventional relationship that a parent would have with the children. I don't have a hierarchy system with my children, although my children know that I do make a lot of the decisions for them. If it's anything important regarding their body or regarding anything that they would find to be significant, I talk to them about it because it is ultimately their incarnation. They chose me. That is a huge honor to me. But it's shifting the perspective around, especially knowing that they have more activated DNA. It's like you could have chose someone else, but you thought I'd be a good fit for you. So I may as well try to live up to that expectation in that role.
Yeah. I just have so many, more and more, the more we talk, the more questions I have for you. Because it's just so, I mean, I'm sure, you know, I'm not sure how many people will be drawn to listening to this conversation, but I'm sure there's just tons of questions like, so this started for you at a young age, but and so you do this work. You're a clairvoyant and you're a psychic, and you do session. I've had a session with you. It was great. So you do sessions. You offer sessions. So you're always, this is your world. You're in your work, and it's just it's part of your life, right?
You are correct.
Yeah. So is it? So it's never. How do I want to word this? Because I know that a lot of people are not going to understand the whole abduction thing. They think that it's evil, and it's just trying to get them to understand that it's not evil, and it's a support, it's a system, it's a system supporting other systems. So,
well, to an extent, I agree with you, Tasha, but also to another extent, I have to argue the counterpoint, which is some of the people that do have abductions are meeting absolutely horrendous beings who are doing atrocious things to them.
Oh.
If you are someone who is in a followed bloodline, then the beings that are abducting you are going to typically treat you with respect because they have an invested interest in you, your family, and chances are you are of that species already in one incarnation or another, and you know them from a previous lifetime. However, for some of the people that I view as abductions of opportunity are very similar to like crimes of opportunity, where they just so happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and experience something horrendous. Yeah. And that does happen as well. It should not be avoided. It should be acknowledged as well.
And so, but from what we're told, at some level, we agreed to have these experiences before we came as well, though, right? Even though they're not pleasant and we might not want to experience them, we do at some level consciously agree for this to happen in this lifetime, right?
I agree with that concept. Yes, I do believe in the aspect of soul contracts, as I have discussed with many of the beings that I work with in relation to things from hybridization to the aspect of the teaching ETs about things that are going down here, teaching humans about what the ETs have taught me, how they do have a form of contract that does take place. Although sometimes the situations that we have with extraterrestrials and multidimensionals can cause a lot of stress and anxiety within this lifetime. For instance, people that go through bonding and pairing in relation to orchestrated relationships. Bonding, of course, means the uniting of two souls, helping them to be familiar with each other and energetically connected. Pairing, the aspect of, it's almost like you have your vibration, someone else's, not only overlapping, but also so that you're, how can I explain this in a way that people are going to understand? It's a form of allowing for there to be a psychic bridge occurring between the two people. And psychic bridges are what allow us to create happier, healthier hybrids, because when you have a very strong connection with someone, there's a love formation that forms. You start to have not only deep romantic feelings for someone, but also you understand their energy better. You're more vibrationally in sync with them, which allows for a lot of hybridization to be more fruitful.
Interesting. So how many, you have 70 hybrid children?
70 something, yes.
Wow. So what kind of advice would you give people that are starting to open up and see things in the sky that they know are not from here, and they want to connect with their guides? What would be the best advice you would give them?
I would recommend that if they would like to actually start interacting with a lot of these beings and getting to know the ones that are benevolent, I would never recommend fully inviting beings into your home that you do not know. So like anything, if you don't know these beings, you don't know who you're inviting in. So it's good practice to do meditation, because then you learn to recognize what your vibration is. You can sense when something else or someone else has projected into your space, or if they're outside of your home or above your home or in your home. And after that, I'd recommend doing things such as astral projection to meet a lot of the beings if you have a stronger fascination with meeting a particular race. Astral projection is a much safer way to meet a lot of beings, because you can wake up out of your body, you can start to come back into your space and not have a being that with a strong overwhelming vibration staring at you, looking down at you while you're in bed, which can be very terrifying to some people. I know if a lot of people woke up and they saw a mantis face in front of them, they might lose it. Whereas if you're astral projecting and you run into a mantis being, she might project onto the image of a woman and be like, oh, okay, I can feel, because of all the meditation I've been doing, that you're showing this lovely woman to me, but I can feel that this isn't quite right. Be like, hey, what do you actually look like? And they might be like, oh, I'm a mantis. Like, okay, cool, interesting. Whereas you're having the same experience with meeting them, but you're not putting yourself in a situation where you may be in a more panic state. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, astral projection is a great way. Try Astral Dynamics by Robert Bruce. It's a great book for anyone wanting to learn.
Okay, I was going to say, so how do we astral travel?
It does take a lot of practice. It does take really learning how to relax your body, put up energy protection, how to actually gain control of what direction you're going and where you're and how you're doing it. Because when you're astral projecting, think of the dreams that you have. Every night that you go to sleep, you are astral projecting. You might find like, oh, I was in a city for a while, then I found myself under the ocean, then I found myself back in my old house. And you might find that you're popping in and out of all these different places, and they can go from black and white to very vibrant color to being in a darker world. You might find yourself projecting commonly to the lower astral if you're someone who's prone to a lot of stress, anxiety, and frustration at that time. And so learning,
it's about trusting it's about trusting and not second guessing yourself, right? Really, when it comes to everything, when it comes to this, is just trusting that you have guides that are there to protect you at all times, and just trust that you are protected. Yeah, there's so many questions I could ask you. I don't want to keep you much longer, Samantha. Thank you for answering all the questions. Samantha's got a great channel, and she's got great videos where you can explore all these kinds of topics there. And if you want to share your website with people, that would be great, Samantha.
Sure. My website is www.samanthamowat.ca. You can find me on YouTube, and very shortly you'll find me on TikTok as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Samantha, and have a beautiful day, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tasha.